If you come across a standard dresser with drawers that's seen better days, you won't recognize it after this fabulous flip idea. I'm removing all the drawers from the dresser since they won't be needed. However, I will be using 2 drawer pulls. All the drawer brackets from the inside of the dresser are being removed. The entire dresser is getting a scuff sand all over, then dusted off with a tack cloth. To prepare for painting, I'm placing 2 pieces of wood and paper underneath the dresser. Choosing a paint color called Cast Iron by Fusion Mineral Paint, I'm first edging all the corners with a smaller paintbrush, then rolling the rest of the paint on all sides of the dresser. I like using a velour roller for smooth surfaces to alleviate brush strokes. I'm now measuring slightly larger than the width and height of all the dresser drawer cutouts, then cutting 4 shorter and 4 longer pieces of lumber to create 2 door frames. Dry fitting the boards into rectangles, I'm adjusting a Craig jig pocket hole maker to the thickness of the boards I'm using, which is 3/4 of an inch. I want to assemble the board, so I'm screwing into the side of the wood grain for added strength. Choosing some simple butt hinges, I'm using a ruler to help position 2 hinges on the edges of each door. Holding the hinge in place, I'm penciling in the screw placements, then pre-drilling small holes and assembling with screws. After ironing some burlap sandbags, I'm positioning them onto a work table, then placing the door frames on top. With a piece of chalk, I'm tracing the inside of the doors onto the burlap. Removing the doors, I'm now positioning various stencils within the chalked area, then replacing the door frames to get a feel for the final design. To protect the work surface, I'm slipping some waterproof bags underneath the burlap. After taping the stencils in place on the burlap, I'm stenciling the images using cast iron for a rustic coffee bean bag look. A mix of coffee and grain sack styled stencils from Funky Junk's Old Sign Stencils are being arranged in random placements until both burlap panels are completed. After the stenciling is dry, I'm placing the door frames back on the stencil burlap, then tracing the outside of each door panel with chalk, cutting along the lines. Flipping the door frames good side down, I'm positioning the burlap panels good side down on the backs of the frames, then attaching them together using a staple gun. The edges of all the burlap is being trimmed just outside the staples. Working with the inside dresser configurations, I found I could simply slip in some cut boards to create simple shelves that didn't even need to be permanently attached. After positioning the doors to be exactly in the middle of the dresser, I'm installing the door hinges with screws. And the end result is a rustic cabinet perfectly styled into a charming coffee station. The mix of raw wood, black, and burlap just adds the perfect coffee shop vibe while adding warmth and interest to any space. The stenciled coffee bean bag images really hone into this theme, which of course can be switched out to any other design you wish. And to complete the look, added mug hooks and all the coffee essentials are ready for coffee time duty.
I saw this dresser on Facebook Marketplace and I knew I could bring it back to life. So I brought it home, set it on some cardboard, and it's time to get to work. First step, take out the top 3 drawers. I don't need those, I want an open space concept, but I'm gonna keep the bottom 2, but then I need to remove the hardware from the 3 drawers and get that cleaned up for shelves. I also wanna save the handles. Instead of buying new handles, why don't I just refinish those also? I'm gonna take them off, even if I'm not gonna use them all, and I'm gonna paint them. First step though is to get them on a piece of cardboard so I can spray them, and also it's best to use 2 to 3 small coats instead of 1 thick one because then it won't run. Next, after that's drying, it's time to clean up the drawers and the cabinet itself, and I need to put on some primer. This is important. Primer gives the paint something to adhere to. That way the paint doesn't peel off later. I'm going to take the drawers, put on a nice coat of paint with a foam roller, and then I'm also going to do it to the cabinet itself, on the inside and the outside. While that's drying, it's time to build the 3 shelves that I need. So I had some scrap plywood hanging around the house, and I cut those up. The plywood's a little thick for my taste, but it's going to work great. Once I get the shelves installed, then I'm going to go ahead and paint the cabinet itself and use a nice white cabinet paint. 2 or 3 coats will do the job. But when it comes to the drawer, I'm going to use a gray cabinet paint. I want it to stand out and give it a two-tone a little bit. So I'm going to get that painted also. This one only took 2 coats. Now here's the key to this whole project. I'm going to build some new doors for the cabinet itself. Using a 1x3, I'm going to cut those to pieces right there, make 2 of them, and put them together. I'm also going to mark where I'm going to join the pieces. I'm going to use my nifty Craig jig. I love this tool. It's great. I can drill it, and it's going to give me some hidden screws when I use it. Watch this. After it's drilled, that's where the screws go. Gives it a nice professional look. I'm going to put some glue on the edges, put those together, and I can either clamp them, but watch this. When I put them together, put some screws in there, and then I join them together with those screws. You can also stick some wood dowels in there to hide the pieces. Now these doors are also going to get the gray paint. So I'm going to get those painted. Once they're dry, on the back side of these doors, I'm going to put some chicken wire. I'm going to use my pneumatic stapler to put them together. Once I do that, I can put it all the way around, and it's going to look really good, but we want to make sure that it is secured. I'm going to go all the way around the edges and make sure it's nice and tight. Now I'm going to take the handle that I painted and I'm going to install that right there. And it's starting to look really good. The same for the drawers. Doesn't that look a lot better how it's all painted? I'm going to get this installed, make sure it's nice and tight, and then I got to put the hinges on the doors. These are just small 1.5-inch size hinges. They're working perfect. Put those in. Take the cabinet inside, and then I'm going to install the doors straight on there. Do you remember what that cabinet used to look like? Well, here it is, and look at that cotton bale. I love that little decor right there. It's great to turn this into a farmhouse kitchen pantry. I love how it turned out, especially with the white and the gray. I hope this inspired you to upcycle your own furniture whenever you get a chance, or take those marketplace flips and make them into a work of art.
If you are in the market for a couple of side tables or nightstands, consider an old vintage vanity instead. First up, I need to take it apart. I'm removing all the drawers, then studying how the vanity is built. Since this vanity is nailed together, I'm wedging a pry bar between the backboard and vanity, then hitting it with a rubber mallet to pull the boards apart. Now I'm checking where all the nails and joins are and removing whatever nails I can with a nail remover tool. However, for the most part, the crowbars, lots of pounding, and finally pulling apart the pieces by hand did the trick. Now I'm removing all the knobs from the drawers and attaching the original screws into the back so they don't get lost. I'm placing all the drawers onto some butcher paper with the varnished sides facing up along with the vanity. To strip off the varnish, I'm using a product called QCS by Stripwell, which is a non-toxic remover. I'm spraying the remover on all the varnished tops of the vanity and drawer tops, then allowing the product to sit for about 10 minutes. Using a putty knife, I'm scraping off the varnish. Most of the pieces needed 2 passes for everything. Now using a surface cleanser, I'm spraying it wherever the varnish was removed, then wiping the furniture clean with a rag. Next up is repairing the sides. Using an orbital sander, I'm sanding over the damaged areas of the nightstands, plus also scuff sanding the rest of the sides to prepare them for the next step. I'm using a putty knife to apply wood filler to smooth out any indents, nooks, and crannies. Some of the holes were very deep, so they required 2 coats with drying time in between. After several days of drying time, I'm sanding the putty smooth, then following up with an orbital sander to areas that needed a little extra work. Now I'm removing all the sanding dust using a tack cloth. Choosing a deep and beautiful paint color called Cast Iron by Fusion Mineral Paint, I'm painting all the small trim work with a smaller artist's brush. Since the sides are smooth and large, I'm choosing to paint them using a high-quality Stallmeister velour roller I pick up through Fusion Mineral Paint to achieve a flawless finish with no brush strokes. I'm rolling on the paint with long, even strokes with an attempt to always work against a wet paint edge. What works best is to roll on all the paint, then slowly roll over it again from end to end with no stops in between to achieve the smoothest finish possible. To paint the drawer pulls, I'm using the screws to hold the knobs while I paint, then setting them down on egg cartons to dry. Now that the paint has set, I'm removing the painter's tape to allow the piece to completely dry. To protect the fronts of the drawers and the tops of the nightstands, I'm using Stain and Finishing Oil in Natural by Fusion Mineral Paint. This is a very easy wipe-on, wipe-off product to work with, and the durability it offers is floor quality. I'm brushing on the Stain and Finishing Oil until my chosen surface is completely covered, allowing it to sit for a few minutes, then wiping the product back off again with a clean lint-free rag. I allow this product to dry overnight. Once the paint has cured for about 30 days, I'll also be adding a coat of natural stain and finishing oil on that as well for added furniture durability. And the final result are two absolutely stunning, high-quality nightstands or side tables that are customized to suit my home. The tone of wood now looks so fresh and rich and feels as smooth as silk, which really pops against the decadent deep tone of cast iron, making this a gorgeous and timeless combination.
I wrapped an iron in tinfoil for this brilliant furniture hack. I grabbed a side table from the thrift store and took it apart. I sanded it, wiped it clean, primed and painted. I painted 2 coats and then sanded and wiped clean between each coat. I added a clear top finish and then I put it all back together. I wrapped my iron in tinfoil to keep it clean and then I turned it on. Once it was heated, I ironed wood edge banding to the edges. I left a bit overhanging on either side and then I trimmed it with scissors. When all the edges were complete, I gently sanded the top edge and filed the corners to ensure a smooth finish. The tinfoil protected the iron from getting any of the edge banding adhesive and kept it clean. Now I have the most beautiful nightstand with a professional finish on all edges. I hope this inspires you to refinish your furniture with this easy technique.
I had a few drawers left over from an upcycle project I did, and I've got 3 of them, and I've got the perfect solution for them. First thing though, I want to keep those wood runners under there. Those are going to come in handy later, but what I do need to get rid of is the plastic guides on the back. They're stapled in, they're easy to do, just pop each of the staples. Once I get those out, I just pop that off. It's not a problem. Next, I want to get rid of the hardware because I'm going to go with new hardware on my next project. I'm going to take the bigger drawer, put it in the middle, and the 2 small drawers on the side, and then I need to measure the whole width of the project. Take that width, and I'm going to transfer it over to a 1x6. I need to cut 2 equal parts of these 1x6s and lay them across. One's going to go on the front, and one's going to go on the back. Once I got those laid in place, I just used some brad nails to hold them down. You can use glue if you want, or screws, but it just seemed easier to use some brad nails, just pop them through, and I did quite a few. It's nice and strong, and then I'm going to tip it up on its side because now, once I get all the dust cleared, it's time to paint. Got to use a high quality primer. Primer is so important because it's what makes the paint stick to the other paint. So I'm going to put this on. Now, you only need 1 coat. A lot of people put more than 1, but I just need to put 1 good coat, and it doesn't cover the whole thing. It does look a little messy at first, but it's okay. Go ahead and get that on. You're going to let it dry for a couple hours. The longer it dries, the better it works. It's time for the paint, and what we're going to need is a good quality cabinet paint. Once I put that on, I'm going to use a nice foam brush and put it on, and I'm going to make it silky smooth. It's going to take a couple of coats. This project did take 3. Now I'm going to lay it on its side, and it's time for some wheels. I bought this whole thing for $9.95. I'm going to go ahead and mark these wheels. They got 4 holes that go on the bottom, and I'm going to pre-drill because I don't want to split any wood when I put the screws in. Once I get it pre-drilled, I can put it back in place and put the screws on. It's going to work really good. I'm going to put 4 wheels on, and look, they're caster and they turn and they spin really nice. Once I get that done though, it's time to put onto the new hardware. It's hard to put these on sometimes, so I take a piece of tape, I put it down where the screw holes go, and then I pull it off and then put it on the cabinet where I want to drill it. Go ahead and drill some holes through where you marked it on the tape. Once you get that drilled, you can just go ahead and pull that tape right off. Put the new screws in, and then carefully but securely put the screws in and put the new hardware. On the ends, I just put some knobs because those work great, and now I'm going to slide it into place. But look at this. This is our guest room, and the great thing is I can put some extra blanket for those chilly nights and store them underneath there. You can also put seasonal clothes underneath, but once you get it full, you can just slide it underneath. Look at that great upcycle project. It actually turned out really good, and it didn't waste any of the drawers that I had for my last project.
I found this TV table that's kind of in rough shape. I need to clean it up and sand down any of these rough edges and get a little bit of the shine off there so I can paint it. I'm also using this kind of outdated nightstand. I'm just going to use 1 of the drawers. I'll first need to take off the handle and the metal hardware on the side. I'm going to clean it up and get any of the residue off of it, sand it down a little bit, and get it ready for paint. I'm painting the folding table a soft gray with a matte finish. This is going to take a couple coats, so I'm just going to do a light coat for now, and then I'll come back and do another light coat. I'm giving the handle, which is kind of this mixture of wood and metal, a nice coat of a metallic bronze color. For the drawer, I am adding a white chalk paint. Because I am adding a light color over a dark color, this is going to take a couple of coats. Again, just using a really light coat, letting it dry for about 20 minutes, and then coming back and adding more coats until I have the coverage that I want. This is going to be an indoor plant stand for me, so there's no need to seal or protect any of these painted pieces. So I'm going to place the drawer right on top of the folding TV stand, and I do need to secure it. This drawer actually slips really nicely right on top of that top of the TV stand, so I'm just going to use some wood glue to adhere it. If you're making one of these at home, you may want to add some screws in depending on how the drawer fits on top of the stand. Now it is ready for plants. So the first thing I'm going to do here is take a thick plastic bag and I'm going to cut it down to size. This is going to line the bottom of the drawer. I want to be able to water my plants, and if any of that water comes out the bottom, it's not going to damage the wood in the drawer. And then the nice metallic hardware adds back on with just the 2 screws. Now it's time to add some plants. This is the fun part. I've gathered up a number of plants from around my house that are going to look really good together. This is a pretty deep drawer, and so I'm using some pieces that'll add some height. So I can put some larger plants in the back and some smaller ones in the front. That was a really simple and straightforward project, making a plant stand out of some thrifted furniture. I hope this inspired you to make one for your home.
Grab an old drawer and let's get started. Start by cutting 4 spindles to the size you want for the center legs. Make sure to save the pieces you cut off. Next, attach the spindles using a brad nailer to each corner of the bottom of the drawer. Then, cut a piece of wood the same dimension as the drawer. Lay it on top of the spindles and measure to make sure each spindle is attached in the same way all the way around. Attach using the brad nailer. Next, measure and mark and attach the feet using the pieces of the spindles you cut off previously. Attach these at a diagonal all the way around each foot using the brad nailer. After that, mark the center of each foot and attach a wheel. Then remove the hardware from the drawer. Next, clean it with TSP. Then sand all of it smooth, rubbing off the dust with a cloth. After that, prime and paint a color of your choosing. You can also do this step before assembly depending on preference. Reattach the hardware and that's it! This adorable little bar card is such a perfect accent to any room. It can be totally customized to fit any space.
I visited our local Habitat for Humanity restore, where I found mismatched drawers and doors. Your first step is to remove all the hardware. Next, fill in the holes with wood putty. After that, give the whole drawer a good sanding. Now measure the insides of the drawer so you know how wide to cut your shelves. After your shelves are cut, drill pocket holes on the undersides of the shelves. Attach the shelves with pocket holes on the bottom. I also picked up some furniture feet from the hardware store. Screw the plates into the bottom of the drawer and then insert the feet. After the feet are attached, it's time for paint. Use the color of choice here. You could really get creative depending on your home style. This shelf worked perfectly to store craft supplies in my office, and it also looked great as a side table in the living room.
So once we removed our knobs, I'm just gonna mark up where I'm gonna make my cut. What I'm using here is just some decoupage. So I did one thin layer there, and then I'm gonna place my paper down. Another layer of decoupage over top of our paper. And you just wanna smooth out any air bubbles. So the next thing we're gonna do is I have this other pattern. So same thing, these are gonna go on either side. We're just gonna put down our layer of decoupage here. Bring up my paper here, line it up, and then use the decoupage to smooth out that wrinkle. And so we're gonna go ahead and do the other side here. So I have a little bit of antiquing wax, and I get some on my cloth. Rub it on the surface where I want to apply it. Take a different area of the cloth, and then I'm going to just rub it in. I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper, and you can add as many layers of wax as you want. So I'm actually going to add just a little bit of antiquing wax to these knobs as well. My knobs back on. So I have these old table leg feet. What I've done is I've just taken a drill, and I have just pre-drilled 4 holes in the corners so that I could slide the bolt of the leg through. And then we're gonna flip our drawer over. Then to secure them, you just use either some bolts, or I have the actual pieces that came with these feet. All you have to do is style it the way you want. So you can put pillows, throws, whatever you like. Feel free to really get creative with this project and make it your own.
My neighbor had an old dresser across the street, but I knew I could fix it up, and the first thing I got to do is get rid of all the rotted and torn up materials. Then I got to take off all of the hardware and the doors on the bottom. I'm not going to need those for the transformation I'm going to make. I also want to get rid of the hardware on the drawers. Now on the top of this, it was pretty beat up. It had been out in the rain and the sun. So I started with 80 grit sandpaper and started going up and down. Once I got it all sanded off, I also needed to go with 120 up to 220. Now sanding produces a lot of dust. So the next thing I did was make sure I got my air hose out and got all the dust off. Got to make sure we get that clean as good as possible. Now I wanted to get rid of the railings that were on the bottom because I don't need those. I want an open concept. So I cut each one of those and pulled them apart. Next, I got some Lawan plywood. This is great for shelving. I wanted to put this on the bottom because it's also waterproof just in case anything spills on it. Once I get it in place, just some small staples will hold it exactly where I need it. Next, it was time to prep for painting. I'm going to fill all the holes from all the hinges and everything like that. And then it's time to go ahead and put the primer on. Primer always goes before paint. You need something to adhere it to the cabinet. The next step was to put some good high quality cabinet paint on there. Once that primer's done, you just go ahead and put all the paint on. This one took 3 coats. Next, it was time for staining. I wanted to add some shelves on the middle, and I wanted to go with a dark stain, so that's why I went with walnut. So I'm going to do all the boards for shelving and that Lawan plywood on the bottom. It's going to get some stain also because I want every one of them to match. Then it was time to do the top. Once it's all sanded down, I put the stain on there, and it took actually 2 coats of stain. You ever see that professional finish that gives it just a durable, clean look? Well, that's what this polyurethane is for. You put that on, and it's going to give it a nice, shiny look to it, and it's going to make it nice and durable. A couple of coats of those. Now it's time back for that middle shelf. I took those boards that I stained earlier, and I put them in place and used a few brad nails to hold them down. Now it's time for some new backing. I got some of that Lawan plywood extra hanging out, so I grabbed some of that and cut it to size. Again, some staples all the way around the edges will hold it in place. Now it's time to get some new hardware. This is really inexpensive, and it changes the look, and it's black so it stands out. Now the drawers need some liners in there because it's kind of rotted out, but it looks good. We're going to close that up. You remember that old dresser in the driveway? Now look at this. What a transformation. I love how it turned into this kitchen island buffet table. It just turned out absolutely amazing. There's no reason to throw an old piece of furniture out when you can look at it, use your imagination, and upcycle it into a work of art. I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did, and I hope it inspired you to do your own upcycle project.
Be amazed at what you can create using discarded furniture. I took some bamboo sticks, which I had purchased from Amazon, and I measured the length of the front of the drawer. I cut the bamboo sticks to this length, decided that I was going to remove and discard the top drawer. I removed the old doorknobs from the remaining drawers, and then I sanded them down lightly. I spaced out my bamboo sticks, and then I applied them, simply using liquid nails. I took the drawers and the cabinets outside, and I spray painted them. While I was outside, I also cut a thin piece of plywood so that it would replace where that top drawer was that I had removed. I simply slid this into place and continued painting the entire nightstand. I added new pulls, which I had purchased online as well. It was a really quick and easy project to do, and I love my new fluted nightstand.
Grab the brightest paints you have and use them to create a one-of-a-kind piece. I've gone ahead and given it a good cleaning. I'm using chalk paint because I know it will adhere to whatever paint is already on this piece. Just putting on blocks of paint where I think I'd like that color to be when I'm done. Now that I have all of my blocks done, I want to give it a spritz of water. Keeping the paints nice and wet helps to blend them really easily together. And I'm going to keep switching paint brushes because I want to try and blend only the 2 colors that are next to each other. While the front is drying, I'm going to go ahead and paint the other sides with the bright pink color. To finish the piece off, I'm going to just dry brush on a little more color. This little wardrobe certainly is bright and cheery now. It's fit for anyone who loves a vibrant pop of color. I grabbed a can of regular oven cleaner, and I'm going to start by spraying the entire piece generously. After leaving the oven cleaner on this piece for about a half an hour, using a stiff bristle brush, I'm going to start scrubbing. I can already see the oven cleaner is working to remove the stain. To get the remaining oven cleaner off, I'm going to give it a quick rinse with the hose and then leave it to dry out in the sun. I want to do another round of oven cleaner though to remove the stain from the underside and a few little areas that I missed the first time. Now that the wood is completely dry, I want to finish up with a quick sanding of the wood. I can't believe how how wonderful this piece turned out using the oven cleaner hack.
I'm going to give this old chair a makeover. I've cleaned it really well, and when it's dry, I'll give it a light sanding, and then I'm going to give it 2 coats of primer. So I'm laying down quite a thin layer of the varnish, making sure that the seat is covered. I'm working in 2 halves here. And then using the spray bottle, spray the back of the paper. So using the scrunched up piece of plastic wrap, start in the center and work your way out, smoothing the paper as you go. Then, when you've done that half, do the same thing on the other side. When it's all completely dry, use a very sharp knife to remove any excess paper. I'm going to use a spray varnish first, and then when that's dry, I gave it 3 coats of a water-based varnish. Here's my chair. I actually decided to do the backrest as well. I'm really happy with how this has turned out.
Found this beat up table at the thrift store last week and it's quite damaged. I'm going to start by painting my table white. I'm going to add all kinds of bright colored paint into my container, and I'm going to add some texture into the paint, and I'm going to use the Fusion Fresco powder, but you could use baking soda and mix it into each of those colors. I'm going to start putting it over the stencil, and we want to start just spreading this all over, and I'm going to hold down the stencil as much as possible here. Okay, and once you have your stencil completely covered like this, you want to very gently try and take off a little bit off of the top. We can peel up that stencil. How gorgeous is that? Who would have thought that you could turn a $7 thrift store find into this beautiful piece of art with just a stencil and some paint? I'm going to give the surface of the cabinet a quick sanding. I'm going to paint the cabinet with some creamy white chalk paint. I'm going to brush on a layer of decoupage glue and then lay on my paper. So I'm going to use my hands to flatten it out. I want to slice off the rest of the paper and want to give it one final coat of the decoupage glue. I can use a sanding block to gently take off any excess. I want to also remove the paper from those. I'm going to finish it all off with a coat of wax. My filing cabinet looks incredible now.
I've got this old glass table, get it all cleaned up. I'm going to tape around all of the edges. Next, we're going to do that 2-part epoxy. We're going to pour it halfway down the table. Next, we're going to mix a little bit of teal. We're going to pour it out. We're going to go with a darker green. And you're going to start spreading out that white. Start getting rid of all that flaky paint. Start spraying it with some good spray paint. It was time to put on the darkest color we have. Put some more waves on and spread it all out. What a wonderful addition to the back porch.
To get the table ready, I'm going to start by giving it a quick clean. Next, I want to give it a light sanding. I want to wipe it again. I like to start with the pedestal first and then do the top. I'm going to add and combine some water with some white paint. To apply the wash, I'm going to use this chip brush because the bristles are natural and uneven. To soften up those lines a little bit, I can wipe them with just a damp paper towel. I absolutely love how pretty this table is now and how much the lighter color changes its look. I found this fun shower curtain. I'm going to start by painting the table. Use a utility knife and run it along the edge. I want to seal the paint to protect it. Put a layer of Mod Podge all over the glass, and now I'm going to lay the shower curtain onto it. I want to trim off the excess, add one more layer of Mod Podge over the top for added protection. This little table is so cute now, perfect for sunny days on the balcony.
Head down to the local hardware store and choose some of the inexpensive whiteboards. I brought the table outside and set it up. All I had to do was take the 1x6s and lay them out. First thing I want to do is measure the board for some of my cross beams. I'm going to cut those a little bit short using my miter saw, and then I'm going to mark out where I'm going to place the boards because I need to lay some good wood glue down. Then I'm going to take my cross board and use finish nails to put it in, and it's time to put the side pieces on. I'm going to use some 1x3s with miter joints. We're going to put the glue on there and use the nails to put it in place. I'm going to go ahead and use some wood putty, sanded the whole table down, and it was time for staining. And I go ahead and do the whole table, clear polyurethane. Go ahead and put the new wood table down on top, and it turned out beautiful.
I'm giving this little side table a makeover. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually give it a coat of black paint. Now I've taken some creamy white paint and I've added water to it. I've ripped up some newspaper and I'm going to apply some of this paint. Taking pieces of the scrunched up paper, I press it into the paint and wiggle it around. Keep repeating the process until you get to the end. Now the tabletop is dry, I'm going to use this stencil. I'm going to give it 2 coats of this gloss decorator's varnish. varnish. Here's my finished tabletop. I think it looks quite effective. It's a very easy technique to do. Drawn a line straight down the middle of the drawers, and I'm going to use a red and a blue paint. When the first colour has dried, I then take the other colour and paint on top of it. Then take your spray bottle and spritz over the wet paint, and then set a timer for 3 minutes. When the time is up, we have to start removing the water now, and I use a toilet roll. Now I'm moving on to the top of the dresser, and I've split the top in half. Now all my drawers are done and dry, and I'm taking a stencil and some modelling paste and applying it to the stencil. I finished off the dresser by doing the stencil again on the top, and here it is. I hope you enjoyed this and you're inspired to have a go at this crazy technique. I'm going to apply both these colours, the green and the blue, randomly over the top. I'm now going to apply one coat of a water-based top coat. I've used some cardboard and I'm just going to cut one edge, cutting very randomly on the bottom, grooves in it. In here I have some dark green paint and I've combined it with their water-based top coat. I apply the green paint on top and then taking my cardboard, going to randomly scrape into it, okay? So then we go on to the next bit, working just randomly, but I decided to follow some of the contours with a metallic gold gel pen. And here's my finished table. I actually decided to paint the edges gold to tie in the gold that I had done on the top.